Okay. I'd like to call to order the Town of McCandless meeting of Town Council for November 14th, 2022. If all of you could join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we always start off with how we set the culture here. We'll work together to better our town. We all have an equal voice. We may disagree, but we will do so with civility and respect because in the end, we are all neighbors. To that point, I'd like to congratulate Senator Lindsey Williams for re-election and for State Rep Arvin Ventkamp for his win in the election. We all have different colors, whether they're red, purple, or blue. We look forward to working with both of you for the betterment of our town. Congratulations. The second annual Winterfest will take place on December 3rd from 4 to 7. It was great last year. I'm sure it'll be even better this year. Details on the website as always. I'd also like to announce that an executive session took place prior to this meeting to discuss personnel matters. Does anyone from council have any announcements that I might have missed? Okay, moving on. Okay, public comments on agenda items only for those that are here. We don't have anybody online. So if you're here, you want to make a public comment, you have 5 minutes, pop on up, state your name and address, and let us know what's on your mind. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. The meeting minutes for the October 24th meeting were in everyone's packet. I want to know, does anybody have any changes that they would like to the minutes? Okay, seeing none. The floor is open for a motion.
I'll motion to approve the minutes
From the
October 24th.
second.
Second.
Okay. Everyone in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. Okay, now reports to the committees. Dr. Rapa is not here today, but Mr. Casey will be filling in for her. Mr. Casey, do you want to run us through the Public Safety Committee reports?
Absolutely. We'll start off with the staff reports. Chief.
Good evening, folks. You all have my report for the month of October. Anyone have any questions for me on that report?
I have a correction.
Yes, ma'am.
On page 4, you had that the council president, Jack Casey, made a request.
Page 4.
So I'm not sure if he made the request or the council president made the request.
Ah, I see. Okay. Apologies. It was Ward 2, Councilperson Jack Casey that did make the request.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I have special guests this evening I brought with me. You folks haven't had an opportunity to meet her yet. Victoria Springs, she's our social worker intern downstairs. She's been here since September. With her is the first person that started this program, Angela. She's Hampton's not intern, I'm sorry, social worker, full-fledged social worker. I wanted to open it up if you folks wanted to, you wanted to introduce yourself, Victoria. If folks have any questions of her. There you are.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to see you guys. Thanks for having me this evening. I have, again, only been here since September, but it has been a pleasure to work downstairs and see the guys and the ladies and everything that they do. But I'm realizing that every town has their things that they struggle with and then their strengths and weaknesses. And I'm so thankful to be a part of just the internship that's downstairs. The guys did a really nice job creating a nice space down there for us. So I look forward to working with you guys until at least May and seeing how everything goes. I look forward, a lot better at answering questions than just talking on the fly. So feel free to ask any.
Tell us your background, where you go to school, where you grew up.
Sure. I grew up in Lower Borough, Pennsylvania, and I graduated from Slippery Rock with my undergrad in 2009. And I've been in the nonprofit sector, working with homeless individuals and families and those struggling with addiction for the past 12 years. And so I wanted to go back and get my master's. I wanted to make a bigger difference in the world. And so it was on my heart to do so, and fell in love with the law enforcement side of what social work could do.
Any questions for Victoria or Angela?
Are you trained to help our first responders as well?
I'm not, but I would love to be.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Questions for Angela for the program or anything like that? Okay. All right, any other questions? If not,
Thank you for being part of our town.
Yes.
Nice,
you.
cool experience we're working on here.
Chief Hawk,
ma'am.
I saw about our deer report for our whitetail deer. We've taken, I haven't. 42 deer and cars have taken 45, so we're catching up. Catching up. The cars are still beating the hunters. And they don't even sit in trees.
And that isn't even the state totals
That's
in there
just-
too.
right.
yeah, that darn,
I had to say it, I couldn't help it.
the rut, ma'am, I apologize. Yeah, noted. Yeah, it's a problem, local and state roads. I see them everywhere. It's unfortunate. Thank you.
Oops, I guess it's back to me. The fire marshal's report. Mr. Wisner.
You also my report, the only thing I'd like to, it's more a comment. You guys have probably seen that. This was Fire Prevention Month last month. It was a real busy month, big undertaking, get in front of over 2,100 students. But it was a good time. I think the kids had a great time learning. They were all happy to see us back. We were happy to be back in. Had a lot of help from the volunteer fire companies. So without their help, I probably would have lost my voice. So other than that, anybody have any questions?
Thank you.
I'd like to comment on all that.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. Those are some of the artwork we got from some of the kids. So feel free to take a look.
Nice. We put that on our social media feed.
Sure. Yep, make that happen.
Yeah.
You have my permission.
It may be copywritten, be sure and check.
Thank you. Building and permit report for the month of October. Oh, Right.
Interesting. Yeah, do you have any questions that was in your report? I'll try to answer anything and anyone might have about it.
okay. And how about code enforcement report?
Same report was in the packet. If you have any questions, I will either answer or look into it.
Okay, liaison reports. Ms. Schwager,
No meeting.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Volunteer fire steering committee.
We did hold a meeting. The minutes were unfortunately not put in the packet, but I'll make sure they are emailed out. We talked about budget, the upcoming banquet and some issues with Westview Water Authority. Like I said, the minutes will follow. It was primarily budget talk.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on public safety? Anybody online?
No.
Nope. Okay. Then I'll turn it over to Jason Singer.
Public Works. Yeah.
Good evening. You guys all have my report. If you have any questions, three things I wanted to go over. The first thing, of course, is the LEAF program. I've probably gotten 150 complaints in the last 7 days for the LEAF program. What happened this year, normally in previous years, the first 3 weeks of the LEAF program, we're making at least 3 passes on each route. This year, in 9 days, everything fell. So just wanted to, we pulled a report from last year to this year. So as of November 11th last year, total leaf collection was 2,788 cubic yards. This year, the same date, 6,460 yards. Convert that to tons, 2021 year to date for right now was 697 tons. This year, 1,615 tons. So technically, we're ahead of schedule, just not fast enough due to the piles of leaves. Also, a lot of folks don't realize those trucks, once they're full, they have to go to North Park, unload, and then go back to where they started. Unfortunately, somebody's at the beginning of a route, somebody's at the end of the route. You know, I wish I could do better. We've had every piece of equipment, including the street sweeper, which we've never done before, just trying to help and keep up with the program. So,
Jeff, can I make a suggestion?
yes, ma'am.
In our new website, this is gonna be improved, but
Mhm.
would it be possible? I think people are okay waiting for you to come and get their leaves if they know when you're coming.
So that's,
So if you could say, we did these roads. The next 3 roads we plan on doing are these 3.
Mhm.
Or just the order. I mean, you surely know where you're going. If you could post that someplace, then people would be like, oh, I know they're not coming tomorrow, but they might be able to be here at the end of the week. And it would give them something to hold on to.
Mhm.
Just a suggestion.
actually, because what happened this year, we have 1 bag route, 3 leaf routes for the trucks. Next year, we plan on dividing them up into 4 sections per route. Put them on a map and let people know this is the first part we're starting, part A. Part B is next. And, you know, every day we update the website on what we've done for the day. Just to give folks an idea of kind of where we are. We're finally starting to we're finally starting to catch up now. But this LEAP program last year went into the 3rd week in December. This year, it's going to finish early. I mean, we'll be done probably on time this year. So I just wanted to clear the air. I wish I could have predicted what was going to happen a little sooner. Wouldn't have made a difference. I mean, we lost a lot of leaves in an amazing amount of time. But we did our best. We still have every person I have on Public Works out every day. So we're trying.
And also, Jeff, this is a service that very few communities even offer.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So
Thank you.
that's all I'm going to say about that.
Okay. The sidewalk project for Grubbs Road. It's on schedule. They're gonna probably start pouring abutments, probably sometime this week. The bridge is scheduled to be installed on November 30th, I believe. We did get the quotes back, the bids back for the Route 19 sidewalk project up at the flats. I would say we were pleasantly surprised at the bids that we did get. And we're in the process now of reviewing, and then I'm pretty sure those will be awarded. Or at least requested to be rewarded for the next meeting. That's all I have. Does anybody have anything?
Yeah, I'd like to go back to the leaf.
Yes.
I don't know if you really understood what he was saying, but he actually on a daily basis goes in and puts the list of all the streets and all the routes. I'm the D route. So on October 31st, when everybody's giving out their ice cream, we do it as a neighborhood event. They said, when are we going to get our leaves? And I had looked at the schedule and they were at street 54 and we're like street 82. I said, I think they should be here by tomorrow or the next day. And they were. So it really does work.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Thank you, Jeff. Thank you and your crews for everything you're doing. Next up here is Environmental Advisory Committee, Mr. Casey.
Well, I'll give you a little update on the suburban whitetail. In September, they took 16 deer. In October, they took 26 for a total of 42 versus last year in the entire year, I believe they took 19 deer. So it's working quite well. If you notice, we did get a notification that suburban whitetail is considering a fee for next year, so we're gonna have to have some discussion about that. The other thing I would like to mention is the Environmental Council, EAC is looking at sponsoring being a medium between us and the businesses to try to promote solar through the University of Pittsburgh and trying to get them educated and get them in contact with people that can provide solar, because the new inflation Reduction Act has a lot of green initiatives in it, and one of those green initiatives is to bring solar to the community. So the EAC is going to try to accommodate a meet between the solar and our businesses in the town. Yes,
I was gonna say, I know they do a solar tour. I don't know if it's once or twice a year. But my parents are part of it, so they come here to my parents' house to see their solar house and stuff like that. So I know it's the only home that's McCandless that's part of it, so.
I
if you
didn't know
ever
they
need
did
it-
that.
Yeah, if you ever need anything, go up there and they'll show you around, or the EAC wants to do it.
Cool, thank you. That's it.
Mhm.
Any questions for Mr. Casey? The technology committee, those minutes were in your packet. If there are any questions, Brian might be able to answer them. Pending no questions, we'll continue to move on. The stormwater management ad hoc committee, those minutes were in your report as well. Are there any questions? Are there any public comments on facilities management from the audience? Pending none, I turn it over to Councilwoman Flumen.
Thank you. We will begin the reports of the Services Committee. We will start with the liaison report from the McCandless Township Sanitary Authority. Mr. Casey, do you have anything to share?
The minutes are in our packet. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to help.
Thank you. There's no further questions. We can move to the McCandless Franklin Park Ambulance Authority. Ms. Zachary.
All those minutes in the budget are all in your folder. I would like to commend them on their cost-cutting measures that they are proposing. They are reevaluating they're changing their healthcare insurance, their payroll company, their vehicle insurance, and their workman's comp. So they're working hard to get the best bang for their buck and to make some improvements there. Money saving improvements. They're also making actual improvements on their website. They have a new ambulance, unit 131, and they are working on a 5-year capital plan. So I appreciate how hard they're working. It's also isn't too late. You want to subscribe to the McCandless Franklin Park Ambulance Authority. You can still look at the subscription material that was sent to you in the mail, or you can look at it on their website. That's all.
Thank you. And moving to the Northland Public Library Authority, Mr. Singer.
The last meeting was a lot of budget talk. We had previously passed our end of it. They spoke about Allegheny County Library Associations and their budget parts, things that affect. We actually have one of our board members in the room this evening. Ms. Caliendo, would you like to add anything to that?
No, that's about it. A lot of budget talk and.
There we are. That's all.
Well, you might. It doesn't affect McCandless specifically, but the current president of the board is not going to be on the board next year. So we will be having a new associate from Bradford Woods.
Thank you.
And a new president, apparently.
So that is all. The rest of the reports are in there. That's all I have.
Thank you. And is there any public comment on the Services Committee? Nothing online. So this would conclude the reports of the Service Committee.
Thank you, Ms. Flumen.
Now, under old business, I think 2 months ago, we decided to form a noise ordinance review committee, for lack of a better term. I think, but Carolyn, you're our liaison to that. I don't know if you or Brian want to give an update. I just wanted to get
I'll do
in front of
it.
council and the community on what's transpired and what may come.
Yeah, a quick update on that is Chief Hawk, RJ Sasko from our planning department, and Alex, our code enforcement officer. Met together to go over some other municipalities, noise ordinances, what has worked, what hasn't worked, and kind of came up with some ideas they meshed together to share. So at some point, we'll sit down with Caroline and go from there and see if there's some recommendations to council to update that at a future date.
Okay, so you guys will bring recommendations and we can go, this one sounds good, this one maybe not, and then we can sort of craft it from there.
Yep.
Okay,
We can do it for the next meeting.
it's at your pace.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, next meeting. Okay, that would work if you could. Yeah. Okay, very good. Now moving to new business. The first is just notification that we're here to notification that a public hearing is scheduled for council's regular business meeting on tentatively identified as ordinance number 1529 of the 2022 series adopting the 2023 budget. Next up, the general municipal pension system aid. Want to give everybody the big picture so you know what we're voting on.
The big picture is that this is the actual action the council has to take for the allocation that is made towards the police pension. It's called the minimal municipal obligation based on the actuary tables of what we owe to keep the fund funded at the proper amount. And
This is strictly a housekeeping item. This is the state aid portion, and it's just designating it to go towards the pension. It's the transfer to US Bank to cover. The state aid was 523,000 and some change. The municipal minimum municipal obligation was about 667 for a difference of about 144,000 that came from the general fund directly. We'll see some fluctuation in that in 23. It's based on a variety of factors between payroll, a 4-year average performance of the plan, as well as actuarial tables. So again, this is strictly a housekeeping item. We just need you all to pass the resolution to confirm the transfer.
So a quick question before we do.
Yes.
So the 144 out of our pocket,
Yes,
is that traditionally higher than it has been because of the
Yes.
stock market and stuff?
it's
Okay.
it's more traditionally, it's higher right now more because of the age of the changes in the actuarial tables. We made some changes in the variables between the interest rate as well as the lowering of wages because we have some openings.
Any other questions about that before we entertain a motion? Seeing none. Okay, floor is open for a motion.
Make a motion.
Okay, Mr. Casey,
Motion to adopt tentatively identified resolution number 21 of the 2022 series authorizing allocation of the general municipal pension system aid.
Second.
second, by Mr. Slipper. Any questions or comments before we vote? Seeing none. Everyone in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. President,
Yes.
point of order. In 7A, would it be possible to say which one of council's regular business meetings to that notification? We should have a date on there.
It'll be the 28th.
I thought the same thing too.
Yeah. Just because it's a notification of a public meeting, but it doesn't say when.
So the public doesn't know when that
We can
is.
I can re-notify that one.
Yeah. We can amend the agenda.
No, do I need to, should I reread it for
No, I think
record?
we just clarified.
Just clarified. Very good.
It does specify it in the packet as well.
Just like to be on the
Yes,
agenda for
absolutely.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna leave off here, the budget.
Not sure why that's on my screen. It's showing up as the full screen. We have any trouble, I can certainly make changes. So have about the same number of slides as last meeting, so hopefully we can keep this at the same amount. It is a little bit of a different topic, so feel free to ask questions as we proceed through the presentation. Tonight, we're going to go over police, fire, ambulance, crossing guards, which is part of the public safety budget. We're going through recycling, public works, snow, traffic, storm sewers, vehicles and machinery, roads, and stormwater management in the general fund as public works. Then we'll proceed into the capital improvements program budget. We'll talk about some of the revenue sources we have for CIP, as well as the general fund planned expenses, public works, parks and rec. We'll talk a little bit about the 5-year capital equipment plan. We'll talk about 2023's items that we'll be purchasing. And then also talk a little bit about fund balance, a little bit of an education factor. So I ask you to bear with me. And then some possible budget additions that we'll need to talk about, because again, this process begins in July of 2022. It proceeds through October 15th when we present the budget. And then as business continues, we do have things that arise or through discussions that we potentially could add to the budget before we present it as part of the public hearing in the 2 weeks. This is a diagram of the 2023 proposed consolidated budget. You can see that the 2023 budget is a percent of change from the 2022 amended budget. It's at about 11% increase. Majority of that increase you're going to see in the capital improvements program budget, as well as the general fund budget as a result of the ARPA funds, which is the money we received from the federal government in response to COVID. Last week, we talked a lot about the general fund and the other special revenue funds like the transportation district and the assessment fund and state aid. You can see the general fund makes up about 68% of the total budget. Capital projects is about 25%. And then the other funds fall within 5%. We've seen this in the previous presentation. It shows the consolidated funds. This is the consolidated municipal budget. It shows the general fund at roughly $18 million. The American Rescue Plan Fund, Transportation District, which has been in existence since about 2004. Capital Improvement Program. Again, there's a large increase in 2023 due to a couple of significant projects that we'll talk about here in a little bit. Assessment fund is available for special projects that will eventually be assessed to the citizens. There's not a lot of activity planned for that in 2023. And then the state highway fund funds the road program in part. And we talked again about those smaller funds last 2 weeks. Where the money goes. So tonight, like I mentioned, we're going to talk about public safety, which is about 46% of the budget. We're going to talk about public works, which is about 23%. Those numbers are slightly off from what you've seen in the last few years. Roughly, public safety comes in at about 50% and public works comes in at about 25%. But because of the transfer from ARPA and the transfer to CIP for the larger budget, that is up to 12% this year, which offsets those larger departments that we've seen in the past.
So Tricia, for dollar wise, they're a slight.
Dollar-wise, they're
percentage wise, they're different because
Yes.
we have more money in the pot.
Correct.
Because the federal government gave us.
Yes, we're at 26 million this year, and last year we are 2022, we're in at 23 million approximately. Public safety, the police makes up 77% of this budget. Fire prevention and protection comes in at 15%, and the ambulance is at 1%. We talked about code enforcement and planning and zoning 2 weeks ago. And they have not changed significantly from 2022. And then the school crossing guards comes in at 1%. For the police, this includes all of the investigation of reported crimes, traffic law enforcement, juvenile services, drug abuse law enforcement. It also involves criminal apprehension, as well as the daily interaction with residents. They are estimated at about 1,200 calls per month. Costs for 2023 include physicals and uniforms for new recruits for replacement of retired officers in 2022. We'll be replacing up to 4 officers in 2023. We are anticipating that following the negotiation of the collective bargaining agreement. There are 2 replacement vehicles in this year's budget. There are software maintenance costs, as well as requested public safety and technology equipment replacements. You'll see this on the equipment list. They've asked for things like ballistic helmets and shields, some emergency signage, a couple other items within their budget. Again, we spoke about this a couple weeks ago. We are in negotiations for the collective bargaining agreement for the police department, and we will be in negotiations for the collective bargaining agreement for public works. So there are limited costs, increases associated with those departments until we have a more definite path forward with those contracts. So depending on how those contracts are negotiated, there will be a need or potential need for a budget amendment into 2023. You can see here some of the changes that we spoke about. Increase in the some of the equipment, and then some standard inflation increases. We do anticipate consistent fuel costs with 2022. The police department does receive state aid to assist in the funding of the police pension that we just passed that resolution. I'm estimating revenues of about $500,000, and I believe that next year's MMO is a roughly 570. So there'll be a slight difference in what we receive potentially from the state. We won't know that state aid number until September of 2023. Other school contributions for SROs, we receive about we receive a 1-to-1 reimbursement for the hours that those officers report to North Allegheny School District for their services. We do fund those officers through the summer, as they are not SROs at that time. And then police detail and protective services, we do collect off-duty overtime charges and fees related to some of the overtime that is contracted out with the community for police officers.
So for those that can't see it, the biggest increase in the police budget percentage wise is the capital expenditures.
At this time, yes,
At this time, buying them more stuff to keep them safe and keep the cars on the road and etc.
correct. There's about $180,000 in capital purchases between the cars and the other requests that were made by the police department. They have a general public safety equipment number between that as well as this capital line item. All of the requests that I received minus 2 cars were included in this year's budget.
Trish, does your slide show somewhere that I can?
I'm going to email it to you after council. I apologize.
'Cause
I did not
can't-
get that to
'cause
you.
these-
You can't see it.
And not at
I
all.
apologize.
And it would be nice to have these ahead of time so we can
Yes.
follow along and even review them. So maybe if we had some questions for you.
Absolutely.
It's hard to, this is a lot of information, just get kind of.
Yes, I will get these to you at the end of the meeting. And then if you have any questions, I'm available the rest of the week. So that was police. Moving on to fire protection and prevention. This includes not only the fire marshal and half of an administrative assistant. It also includes all of the volunteer fire company programs, including their annual banquet, their physical program, that is up about 60% over 2022's budget amount. Additionally, it includes money for a fire response strategic plan and capital funding for pre-planning software for commercial alarms that they've been asking for in recent years. We have increased their distributions by 5%. So the current year distributions were about 162.5. This year, we are for 2023, we're projecting 176.25 per department, which again is a 5% increase.
And altogether, that's what sort of range.
I'm sorry.
All three. How much do we give our do we commit to our firefighters?
We commit a total of $1.2 million as part of budget 411 in 2023. That's up. This slide shows a reduction of 13%, but that's because we purchased a fire truck this year for $300,000. So while it shows a reduction of $198,000, it's really offset by that $300,000 purchase that's non-recurring. At least for 2023. I think the next projected fire engine purchase is 2024 by Ingomar. In addition to the expenditures for these line items, we receive fuel reimbursements from the volunteer fire companies that reduces their, so the $170,000 that they receive over the course of the year, we will get about $19,000 of that back in fuel reimbursements. Additionally, we receive from the state a foreign fire contribution of I'm estimating 186.8. That money comes in from the state. We immediately transfer it to the Volunteer Fire Relief Association. That money is dispersed annually to the fire companies, and they are able to use it for equipment purchases, whether it be turnout gear or other items. In addition, they have a 10-year repayment plan. A lot of the money that we have loaned out for fire trucks has been repaid because we're in a new cycle. So that will be reduced by $80,000 in repayments of loans. There's not much change between 2022 and 2023's ambulance budget. It continues to be mostly reimbursement. In addition to that, we have about $15,000 designated for additional review of operations and organizational structure for the authority in 2023. And that's a reduction from the 35 that we originally proposed for 2022 strategic solutions program. That's that difference you'll see. Additionally, as I mentioned, they reimburse the town for vehicle repairs that they receive at cost. And they also reimburse us for fuel that they receive less the applicable taxes.
We do in-kind services for them, don't we?
Yes.
What are those?
The vehicle repairs and the fuel reimbursements, they net out on the balance or the income statement. In addition, we also do some landscaping services. They receive some utility costs.
So the 98,000 is not the actual
Correct.
way we support them.
It's what they reimburse us a lot for. The only other things, we do provide them with a volunteer workers' comp policy for their office staff. And then, like I mentioned, some landscaping and other general services. School crossing guards, we receive a 50% reimbursement from the school district for these individuals. Currently, there are 5 in the budget for 2023. There are 4 assigned plus 1 alternate. This is consistent with prior years. You can see there's just a slight increase. We are not proposing a wage increase for them at this time for 2023. But again, as I mentioned, we receive the reimbursements from the school district for the crossing guards as well as the zone lights. Any questions about public safety before I move on to public works? Okay. This is the pie chart for the Department of Public Works. You can see how it breaks out. Consistent with prior years, the majority of the salaries expense is here in this Public Works Administration code. We have some overtime and snow and ice control. We have some labor and traffic control devices. They have 2 designated employees, and we have some labor and repair of vehicles and machinery. They have 3 designated employees. The rest of it is mostly supplies and operational items. Again, the labor costs that you see projected for this for 2023 are at a minimum because this contract will be negotiated sometime between probably March and the end of next year. 426 recycling includes the costs for the collection of recycling materials here in the town. It includes the composting for the LEAF program that is then available to residents later in the year. It includes the repairs and items for the LEAF trucks. It's a relatively small budget at $62,000. And the increase is mostly due to, I believe, the estimated inflation on the repairs for those trucks and the fuel for them. That's not telling me otherwise. The Public Works, this, as I mentioned, 430 is the majority of the salaries for the 22 crew members, as well as the 2 supervisors, the assistant superintendent, the superintendent, and the assistant. you can see the slight increase, as I mentioned, for that. Snow and ice control. This department mainly deals with the salt purchases here at the town. We have 2 contracts that we use through the North Hills COG, as well as the state CoStars program, as well as the overtime that's anticipated for callouts based on last year. Hopefully it snows less this year. We do maintain 110 miles of town roads, 20 miles of state-owned roads, as well as 18 miles of private roads in the event of a large accumulation. And you can see that mostly that 5% increase is due to the rise in the salt contract. The 577, 550 is mostly salt. Traffic control devices, again, this is the 2 employees who manage 4,000 advisory, regulatory, and street name signs, 29 signalized intersections in the town. They also troubleshoot and repair the traffic signals and controllers and the 250 signal heads. In the event that we have a more advanced repair that's necessary, we will contract that out. We are anticipating increases in this mainly due to the cost of possible repairs or equipment or parts as part of this going into 2023. You'll see that ongoing in the Public Works Department is that we do anticipate that vehicle parts, machinery parts, truck parts, those items with inflation in 2023 are anticipated to rise, as well as delay in being able to receive them. 436 is storm sewers and drains. This is just the general fund portion. This department also appears in CIP. This is for the maintenance of stormwater drainage facilities that are part of the town streets. There's a small budget here because most of it falls in CIP. Same thing, I'm sorry, 437 is repairs of vehicles and machinery. This is our mechanics. They manage roughly 59 pieces of major equipment, including police vehicles, public work trucks, excavating and other equipment, the leaf vacuum trucks, the street sweeper, and the administrative vehicles, as well as minor pieces of equipment that we have on site. They also help the McCandless Franklin Park Ambulance Authority for some of their repairs and maintenance, as mentioned in 412. Most of the town fuel is charged to this department. And you can see those increases there for that. Maintenance and repair of roads and bridges. This is one that is majority of the activity is shown in capital improvement projects, but this is for pothole maintenance, patching, minor incidental repaving and milling along with roadside trimming. Town practices facilitate keeping these expenditures low. There is guide rail replaced every year. And then we use in-house labor for a lot of this work. And you can see the slight increase there overall. Again, this is a general fund portion of your stormwater management and flood control, not a significant budget item at 114,000. It's some of the MS4 work that's done with Gateway Engineering as part of the inspections that have to be done. The major expenditure line in this department is engineering because they do a lot of our MS4 inventory work. I'm sure Jeff's in agreement with all this. So as we went through Public Works, this is the general fund portion. Do you have any questions about Public Works at this time? Okay. This is a 5-year look at the Capital Improvements Program Fund. I know this is really hard. Sorry?
There's no way to zoom in on any.
No, there's not. I apologize. I understand this is really difficult to read. This is available on the town website under the town council page. If you click on budget and audit, this presentation will be there tomorrow, and the full budget is available on the website as well. this comes right out of, this entire presentation comes right out of that presentation. Couple things to talk about real quick here, because I know it's hard to see. The majority of the revenue that's received for CIP is either grant revenue or transfers in from other funds. We have projected for 2023 revenue from the multimodal sidewalk grants. We're proposing that we'll receive an Arlie traffic signal grant, as well as the Wall Park GEDF grant, which we postponed in 2022. Then you'll see the general fund transfer of $2.2 million. That is within the fund balance policy, because this was roughly the, for lack of a better term, net income we had in 2021 that is then proposed to be the transfer for 2023. Governments don't have income, they have fund balance. And so this is the addition to fund balance approximately from 2021.
Tricia, does the 2.2 include the federal funds? Or that's outside of that too?
No, that is strictly, well, it includes I'm sorry, it does include the 730 that was transferred in 2021. And so that is why this number is slightly higher. Yes. And then the transportation district is the standard 124.7, which is the annual income from that fund, as well as the anticipated transfer from state highway aid. And we talked about that 2 weeks ago. That's the money that comes in from liquid fuels from the state. So we're anticipating about a $4.1 million revenue source for 2023.
What was it last year, since we can't see it?
It was, I'm projecting for this year, we're going to be at 3 million. And then for 2021, it was 2.1 million.
It's for what in 20?
I'm projecting 4.1. And a good portion of that is the difference and the general fund transfer of $1 million from year to year. Most of the ARPA money is coming into the general fund and then being transferred out to CIP.
So to summarize, we have this federal money.
Yes.
And the 2021 or 2022 budget is going to be positive, meaning the revenues minus the expenses, that
Yes.
net income, for lack of a better term, is going to be up. So we have a little bit of extra money, and we're mostly putting it to capital improvements. Gets basically doubled in two years.
The town of McCandless has very few funding sources for CIP. General fund is the primary source for funding for CIP. And so the fund balance addition from year to year is projected to be added every year. So yes, that money is increased because of the federal money that we received from ARPA.
Thank you.
So I'm projecting 2.2 in 2023, which was the fund balance addition in 21. And I'm also currently projecting about a 2.2, 2.4 for 2022, which would then be the deposit for 2024. And you'll see that in a future slide. So hang on. Okay. So the capital improvements program fund is divided into 3 categories. There's general government. We have sidewalks and town hall improvements in that for 2023. We have the sidewalks in Grubbs Road being wrapped up, as well as the Route 19 sidewalks that are projected to be completed by June of 2023. And then the town hall improvements for 2023, that $800,000 is the improvements to the HVAC system here. When I projected this budget, we thought we were going to be done with the windows in 2022. So you'll see that on a future decision slide. But the 800,000 is strictly HVAC. This is just a recap of what we just talked about, the multimodal being the multiple sidewalk projects, as well as the HVAC improvements. The second section of the CIP program is the public works. That includes general administration, which is most of our large equipment. It talks about snow removal, which is mostly our plow and spreader purchases. The traffic control devices, which we are anticipating traffic camera purchases and signal upgrades. Storm sewers and drains, which includes the pre-work on the road program that our Public Works Department does to replace the lining and or pipe for the stormwater program. The big item in this section for 2023 is the Blazer #1 culvert. We've been talking about that for a couple years. We did the planning for it this year. There will be a gunite lining for, did I say that correctly? For the Blazer #1. In addition, there's a small culvert at Winchester that will mostly be done in-house for the storm sewers and drains. The maintenance and repairs of town roads is at $1,250,000 for next year. It's at $1,200,000 for 2022, so there's a slight increase for 2023. You'll see that that goes up over the 5 years. The stormwater management and flood control, we've reorganized this a little bit for 23 and beyond. We've identified the 4 watersheds and then the potential projects that will be designated in each watershed over the 5 years to continue our MS4 permit process. And so next year we plan to address Pine Creek and North Park watershed, as well as the Little Pine Creek watershed. And we're working with Gateway to identify those projects. So to recap, in general government under large equipment, we have the purchase of 2 10-ton dump trucks and the associated equipment and plows, which are in 432. In addition to the 2 10 tons, Public Works would like to replace the boom mower. This has been projected to be replaced over the last 3 years, but has always been superseded by something that needed it more urgently. So we are again projecting for that in 2023. And then traffic control devices and traffic cameras. We're proposing up to 4 intersections of traffic cameras for public safety initiatives through Ryan's department, the chief of police and police. They've been working with the tech committee on identifying where those intersections should be identified. In addition to that, we mentioned as part of the Public Works Department general fund, we have roughly 29 traffic signal intersections in the town. They need to start being repaired. And so I'm proposing over the 5 years that we add roughly $375,000 or $400,000 per year to address those 29 intersections. There are a number of state grants and federal grants for those, as well as joint community projects, whether it be with Pine or Ross or Franklin Park, that can be addressed. If we get the grants, we'll continue at the level that's listed here. If we don't, we would do half as much because most of those grants are a 50-50 split.
So Tricia, is it safe to say there's a big increase in our capital improvement?
Yes.
And it's being spent on culverts and stormwater management, basically. half
And
of it.
roads.
Yeah, and roads, yeah.
And yes, I mean, it's in the past, since I've been here, we've picked a category and we focused on that category to a large extent. This year, I feel like we spread the wealth and we had large projects in multiple categories. And on top of that are projecting multi-year plans to replace aging infrastructure within the town. So as I mentioned, storm sewers and drains, as the weather permits, our crew works to repair and replace storm sewers consistent with what we anticipate paving as part of the road program. Additionally, there is the contract work for Blazer #1 that's estimated at 1.2 million, and then Winchester, which is mostly going to be done in-house. 1.25 million for the road program. We currently have a repaving program at about 18 to 20 year time span. Some roads remain in better shape longer. Some roads deteriorate more quickly. Public Works reviews the road's condition annually in the fall and then reviews it in the spring with the understanding that winter is harder on some roads than others. Based on the age and condition of the roads, they then develop what will be addressed in the following year. We talked about the plan for the two watersheds being Pine Creek and North Park, as well as Little Pine Creek. The final category for capital projects is Parks and Rec. We are proposing, Public Works staff has come up with some drainage improvements at Wall and Vestal Park. We postponed the Wall Park field retrofits in 2022 based on the bid prices that came in. That is funded by a $250,000 grant that expires early in 2023. So we'll be addressing that first thing. In addition, we'd like to place cameras within our parks, again, for public safety to deter vandalism and for asset management. Any questions on the CIP program? As discussed, both tonight as well as 2 weeks ago, this is a listing of the vehicle equipment and software purchases across the different departments. How this reads is the item and then the department that it falls within, whether it's the general fund or it's the capital improvements program fund. There is also, as part of the presentation on the webpage, the additional 4 future years on top of this. We do project this out over 5 years. So, as I mentioned, this process starts in July. We talked to the department heads late August, early September. We meet with Gateway and our engineers. They continue to do work. Nobody stops on October 15th. And so as part of that, there have been a number of possible additions to the 2023 budget. To mention a few, as we talked about, the collective bargaining agreements, the CBAs will be negotiated into the beginning of 2023. Those items could potentially add significant personnel costs that will need to be added to the budget. Those are mostly going to be a budget amendment. That's nothing I can forecast at this point. The HVAC estimate, while I have $800,000 in the budget, most recently that project, the projected cost came in at roughly $900,000, which is a $100,000 difference. We're reviewing the scope of that to see if there's anything we can cut back. In addition, the Windows estimate, it's in the forecast for 2022's projected expenditures. So currently I have $225,000 in that number. Unfortunately, that number is estimated also at $400,000, which is about $175,000 difference. We have not bid it yet. We don't have a final number. We do have the opportunity to pull back on the scope if necessary, or we have the opportunity to add the money to the budget or do a future budget amendment in 2023 once the bids are in. Many communities have a contingency line item. As we move into 2023, many communities are concerned about possible needs for compensation adjustments to not lose employees or to offer incentives for employees, in addition to other things. There's a request for Parks, Recreation and Trails Master Plan. We're estimating that could come in at roughly 30 grand. There's a possibility that that would have grant money associated with it. I'd like to propose a contingency line item under the town administration budget for about $50,000 to assist Brian in some of the unforeseen things that may come up in the next year. He's been with the town since August 29th, and it's an ever-changing organization with changes in council as well as changes in the market. I think this is something to consider, or I'm proposing to consider. So the CBA I don't have a number at this time. HVAC estimate could be up to $100,000 based on the preliminary estimate. The window estimate, possibly 175. I'm proposing a contingency of 50,000. And then again, that Parks and Recreation Trail would be roughly 30. that master plan. After we have the next slide, we can go back to this. So as part of tonight's agenda packet, it was the public notification for the public hearing. As part of that, you saw the preliminary draft ordinance, which talked a lot about fund balance after it gets through the revenues and expenditures that are proposed for the budget for this year. On this slide, we do not project there be a fund balance at the end of 2023 for ARPA. We'll have spent all that money in 2023. The transportation district has a fund balance of roughly $588,000. It's dedicated for capital projects. The capital projects fund will have a remaining fund balance of approximately $68,000, again, dedicated to capital projects. The assessment fund is dedicated for those capital projects that were the initiation of that fund. So again, the three items that you see at the top of that slide are mostly capital projects. Based on the projections and estimates that we have for the general fund, we're going to project a 2023 general fund balance of $12 million. Now, here's where the short accounting lesson comes in. So under the GASB, which is the government accounting standards, we designate general fund balance 5 categories. Non-spendable is things like prepaids. So things that I buy in 2023 that I can't pay for, that don't exist until 2024, like insurance. I pay for it in October, but it's for 12 months. And so it goes into the following year. Because we've changed the timeline of when we pay for insurance, I have a larger non-spendable balance than I've had in the prior years because of most of that is insurance. So take 300 grand right off the top of that 12 million because it's already spent. It's just spent in the future year. The town doesn't have any debt. And so there's no restricted money currently that I'm anticipating. Most of that is contractually obligated. And so the town can't get out of it if it had restricted money. It's usually what your debt service is for the next year, or if you have a large contract that you know you're going to have to pay for in a future year, you would encumber that money at the end of the year. We don't have any, so we don't have anything in that classification. Committed is what y'all designate. So normally by ordinance is what you have as committed fund balance. So once you pass the budget ordinance, you've committed, or in its current state, $1,075,000 in the fire apparatus fund. That's for the future purchases of fire trucks. The emergency reserve, currently the policy is set at 2 months. I'm estimating $1,700,000 per month. That's a high estimate. Most of the year I go at about $1,100,000 is my average expenditures. But when you take it over the 12 months with your transfers to other funds, specifically CIP, it can increase that number. So that's a 2-month emergency reserve in the committed column. And then the CIP transfer is what you would pass as the budget transfers for CIP. And right now that sits at 2.2 million. Then you get into the signed, which technically is stuff that Brian and I are designating. What the finance director and the town manager would like to see assigned. We talked during the 2x2s that we would like to reserve or assign fund balance for the police healthcare. The retired police officers under the current contract receive health insurance from the time they retire until age 65 or Medicare. This is my estimate of what the current liability is on the books for that police officer OPEB, that $476,000.
That's per year.
That's over with the current retirees. That's what I'm projecting between now and when they turn 65. This is something that's looked very favorably on by our labor attorney as we go into contract negotiations to show that the town's being responsible so that we have dedicated money assigned for our police officers for health insurance. The emergency reserve assigned is that extra month that I'm looking for. 2 months makes me nervous. I'd like 3. I'd like 4, but I'll take 3. And then the 2024 CIP transfer is roughly assigned at 2.5 million. As I mentioned, I'm estimating this year's addition to fund balance to be between 2.2 and 2.4 million. We've been short in some years because we haven't needed it. This would catch us up. It's certainly not an over investment, which leaves me unassigned of about $235,000. Okay, so going back to this number, this slide, those are items that I would like either a head nod on that I can add to the budget for the public hearing so that I can post a adjusted ordinance. Or if you have items that you would like me to remove at this time, is the time to tell me from the budget. We've now gone through all the departments, all the funds, talked about all the expenditures.
What's your recommendation?
I definitely would like to add a small amount to CIP, just because I do believe between the scope change, if we can get it, and then what we bid, we've gotten some competitive bids recently, more competitive than we received a couple quarters ago.
The HVAC we're talking about?
Yes. So I'd like to add a small amount there to compensate for that. The Parks Recreation Trails Master Plan, I think is going to be a wash because I think we'll get some grant money to do that. And it could be a budget amendment. And I just don't have, I want to leave some room with the collective bargaining agreement because I know there's going potentially to be some change there. Right now I have about a 2% increase for the wages. And like I said, that's probably going to be conservative.
And touching base on the competitive compensation, looking at the market and what we're seeing out there. I just want to be able to retain talent and have that ability if needed. So that's why I kind of was looking at it in that sense.
I was at an industry meeting last week, and a couple of the agencies that were there mentioned that when they're having to replace employees at this point, they're offering about a 25% increase over what they paid the outgoing employee to get very qualified individuals.
Any other
Trish.
questions?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
share your desire to increase our emergency fund from 2 months to 3 months. What would we have to do that?
I can propose a change to the fund balance policy, and I can bring that to a future meeting as a policy. It doesn't need to be advertised like an ordinance, but I can certainly bring that as part of either the public hearing meeting or as part of the final budget approval on the 12th of December.
That is something that I would definitely like for us to see too.
I'd like to have more information on it if it's an outlier to other communities as well. To
I can
know.
provide the,
What's best practice?
yes, I
yeah.
can provide.
So
the
I don't
government
wanna-
finance officer.
I don't want to have broken bridges, but saying we're having extra money in the bank, I have to justify that. So
Absolutely.
show me what it is to everyone else.
I will reach out to some neighboring communities and find out what their policies are and forward that to y'all.
Thank you.
I think the best practices.
And then the-
Standard
yes.
is what we need because our other surrounding communities may not have the funds that we have. So we want to do best practices.
I'll include
Because
the
as we
government.
have found
Yes.
recently, that sometimes there are emergencies and sometimes we need extra money. Now, thank goodness that we got a lot of money from the federal government that helped us out. That may not always be the case.
Absolutely. This is an opportunity where we have that money available to set aside.
Exactly.
What would that do to would we have to take that out of the 2023 budget? Or
It
it's just
would-
a-
I
it's
would
just a
move
policy
that-
moving forward?
I would move that assigned emergency reserve up to committed.
It's there now.
I was just-
We haven't
it's just-
spent it yet.
Yeah, we're just calling it sort of a,
She has it down as assigned. She wants to move from assigned to committed.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not against it, but I also want to see what others are doing. We have never. In how many years have we ever fallen below our budget? Since you've been here?
No.
Never.
According to the slide that you put up,
Mhm.
didn't we in 3 years, when are we running?
So,
out of money
yes.
In 3 years?
If you go, and I don't have it because I stopped at 23 for CIP. But if you go out to 27, which is the 5-year plan that's required as part of the budget, the town will be in a negative fund balance for CIP with the current designations.
Yes,
And what does that mean in English for everyone else?
It means that we'll have to cut back on programs for CIP because there won't be any money to
Or
pay for
delay
them.
CIP,
I'm sorry,
or delay the capital.
or
improvement.
delay the capital
delay.
projects. Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
So
I see.
in 3 years, which as far as has that happened to us before ever?
Have we delayed?
No, have it been zero before?
In the first year I was here, we were projecting a negative. But since then,
we've
We've-
built fund balance.
we've built
every
fund
year.
balance every year.
We haven't spent it. We've saved it.
Yes. It's been over what we had anticipated spending.
Correct.
And not only that, there's delays with capital improvement projects. There's consistently delays because of
Yeah.
weather and contractor schedules, et cetera.
I mean, in common terms, we're holding taxpayer money
Yes,
and we're not spending it on projects. So
In the current year.
this CIP is now spending that taxpayers' money on projects that need done.
correct.
Thank you.
For 2023. Yes. So this is some of the items I would like to add.
We choose not to add.
Yes.
I mean, my personal opinion, and again, we can talk, I would think ones that we don't know specific numbers or more budget amendment process things.
Like the
I can't
CBA,
see
yeah.
us saying to go ahead when we don't know the numbers. So if a CBA is that,
Yes, there's
Yeah.
nothing we can do there.
if we haven't had estimates yet for the HVAC, I'm leery on taking the engineer's number. We found through sidewalks and everything else, the numbers are all over the place. Again, I personally would see a budget amendment for a change for something we don't even know scope is finalized yet on some of these items.
Correct.
I'm kind of that same way on the Windows estimate. I know we have one, but I know that project is back and forth with engineering and design. I again would rather see a budget amendment for those two items. I think you're gonna get a grant for your Parks and Rec and competitive compensation. I wouldn't have a problem giving some there. But that's my opinion. I'm more
I
than
tend to
welcome
agree
to
with
listen to
Mr.
others.
Singer. It's just sort of like, don't really do anything for these. And because something will shift in our huge capital
Mhm.
improvement fund anyway, because something will shift
Always
in
does.
the year following, or something came in under, or we got a grant for this or that. And then you just do that through our budget reconciliation process partly through the year. That's my two.
I think it's more responsible to do a budget amendment than is trying to throw a dart at a board at some of these
Yeah.
things.
Exactly, yeah.
What about?
I would agree, because I also know, just based upon different people I've talked to, that we're forecasting things for the future, they're saying costs are gonna come down. So I think we should also wait and see what the next,
Yeah.
they say past spring, what
Yeah.
that shows too.
Trish, what's your?
I feared, with the ARPA money that we have a short-term memory of having those millions of dollars coming into our budget. And we're forgetting what it was like before we had that.
Mhm.
Very good.
So I think exercising some caution and conservative spending. I agree with having the 3 months reserve. Also, but I do think maybe looking at things like the HVAC and the windows. Until we have the numbers of when we're ready to cut those checks, it might make more sense, like Mr. Singer said, to wait for an amendment on those, to make it an amendment process.
Are we adverse to the small contingency in the general fund,
Of what dollar amount?
50 grand?
50 grand. Start on the left here, contingency line item, 50 grand, and that's used at the. I
It
guess
can be
it's-
used at the discretion of the town manager. We can report on it quarterly if we spend some of it. That's something that I've seen in other communities. It would be within roughly his purchasing limit for 2023 when we propose that. It wouldn't necessarily be one item. It could be multiple. It can have whatever strings you want attached to it.
And that also includes the concept of Parks, Recreation, Trails and Master Plan.
Correct. We could also roll that into that number if it's available.
I would be fine with rolling those bottom two into that $50,000 mark.
So what do we, so you need a head nod on, are you okay to
And-
have a $50,000 contingency line item used by the town manager? And
Yes,
with
I'd like to roll
approval?
that into the general fund budget and
Yeah.
make that change for the
You don't
public
get to
hearing.
pick what's in there. You just give him free leeway.
I think
with
we need quarterly
$50,000.
reports at least at a minimum.
I don't think we should do it. I don't want to know when money's already been spent. I want to know before it's
I was gonna
spent.
say, I think we should, yeah, we should be able to discuss that now in
Yeah,
advance.
I think we know in advance, not
And
when
I'd
it's
say
done.
monthly or whatever. You know,
It'd be proposed.
So go ahead and add it, but know that it can't be spent until it's brought to council.
sure.
Do we even need the contingency? Like, look at our budget this year, where
Yeah.
there's so many were up, so many were
Yeah,
down,
I
so
don't
many
even
were
think we,
this.
I don't think we need it personally.
Contingency. Mr. Casey, you're.
I don't think it's very much money. I think it gives him a
Percentage
little
wise,
bit
it's less, way
some
less. than
flexibility
1%.
with his job. I
Yeah.
think it's prudent.
I'm worried we're micromanaging our manager at some point here. That's all. I mean, he has a schedule of spending up to what, 40,000. So, I mean,
And that number will go up in
and that, I
23.
mean, it's basically the same thing. So I think we're actually giving him a little direction by saying this than him taking the money. I'd rather say you can do it for this and say, give me a report. And we're all on the same page than you just doing it and us not being involved, at least. I don't know, maybe I'm speaking out of turn there, but I'll listen to others.
For these two things, one is, do we want the contingency? And then the second is sort of what mechanism we're going to impose. Is that,
Yeah.
hearing here? So for those that say, okay, that 50 grand contingency is okay, that would be, what do you got?
Right, well, I think it's okay, but I'm trying to listen to everybody's opinions on the accounting of it. Does it need to be accounted for before the check is written or after? I guess is what I'm hearing from council here. I think I'm leaning toward with Mr. Casey, you know, we've hired a manager to manage. And I don't want to micromanage, but I like the idea of a quarterly report.
You're for the contingency.
Yeah, I'm for it.
Carolyn, you're for the,
I could go either way.
Okay.
I'm really,
you were.
I was for it with
the
a quarterly
contingency.
report.
You're for, Kim, where do you fall for the,
I don't think it's
you
necessary.
know, if necessary? So seems like. Yeah. I'm
Mike,
not-
I didn't hear what you thought.
I'm not a fan of the contingency because the budget goes up and down,
Agreed.
like everyone's household
Agreed.
budget. Oh, my car broke. What do I, you just move money, your money around. So, but it seems like four of us.
I think it gives him the flexibility to move fast. There's opportunities sometimes to spend money for certain reasons. I don't know what those reasons are, but it's nice to have a buffer in case he needs to do his job. He's got
It
the
seems
money.
like there's four in support of the concept of the contingency, but I think we need language on how, how you're gonna approach us to approve it. Is
Mhm.
that fair for everybody?
That's
So
fair.
if you could bring that
Sure,
next time.
absolutely.
So the contingency, but none of those other things listed.
Okay, thank you for that direction.
Everybody
The-
good? Head nods up here. Okay.
As a wrap up, this is where we are in the budget process. We had the first workshop on the 24th, where we discussed the departments listed. Today, we discussed the departments in the general fund for public safety and public works. We talked about capital improvement program, and we talked a little bit about fund balance. On the 28th, there will be a recap of the budget, at which time we will have a public hearing. And then on the 12th, we will bring it forward for a review of the public hearing as well as salary reviews during executive session and the approval of the 2023 budget. So are there any other questions?
None. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, very
Thank
good.
you.
Okay, let's get through these last few things here. We have an opening on the Northland Public Library Authority.
I'm the library liaison. I would like to make a motion to appoint Dana Getz to the Northland Public Library Authority for a 5-year term effective 12/31/2022.
We have a second.
Second.
Second, Mr. Casey. Everyone in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Next up,
Keep running with a motion to appoint Jerry Offman to the McCandless Industrial Development Authority for a 5-year term effective 12/31/2022.
Second.
second. Next one. Okay, everyone in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Motion to appoint Gregory Quachak to the zoning hearing board for a 3-year term effective 12/31/2022.
This one,
Second.
who was that, Carolyn or? okay,
Trish.
Trish. Okay, everyone in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Mr. President, I
Yeah.
would like to make a point, just in case anyone's keeping track, that while we have a 2-term term limit on our committees, boards and authorities, that some of these individuals have been appointed for a 3rd term because there were no other applicants.
Very good.
So those are what the exceptions were. So if you're like, hey, what about this? We didn't have any other people apply. They were still willing to serve. And so we wanted those positions filled.
Very good point, thank you. Last little thing, legal advertising legislation, so where do we stand with the Post Gazette? Are we allowed to do advertising for our, I know we had to delay some meetings because of it.
Latest information, I think Brian confirmed it to you that the Post Gazette is being printed by the Butler Eagle and some of those copies are being distributed in this town. So if that's the case, then
That state law says that we have to put them in print
correct,
and we can't use our own website or other media
that's
to
correct.
do that.
So
And there's a
discussion,
bill pending
well,
or not pending.
since the legislative session is about to end and all the new legislators will be put in 2023, all the bills will be reintroduced. Previously, Senator Lindsey Williams, along with State Rep Rob McCurry, both had co-sponsored legislation that would allow us to advertise via our website, via other ways other than just the newspaper. So I think moving into 2023 with new bills, we're going to continue to ask our legislators, Senator Williams, who already has supported before, to continue, and also our new state representative to co-sponsor or look into legislation that will continue to help move into the 20th century with advertising.
So the reason this is on here, I didn't know if we as a council wanted, Brian to write a letter to them to say, like, you're really tying our hands here. Why don't we, like Brian said, get into the 20th century? Is it better to wait? Is it better to wait till the new?
Whenever you think it's appropriate.
Yeah, whenever it's
send them
appropriate,
to-
send it.
Yep. Yeah, I think informally we'll continue and also work with the COG with a letter from multiple communities.
I'll bring up the COG meetings Thursday. I'll bring it up at our COG meeting. So I guess it's just, are we okay with a head nod? If Brian, at the appropriate time, we okay for him to send a letter saying this really has tied our hands. Let's just move into the 20th century. Okay, very good.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. Very good. Okay, last, any general public comment from those here with us? I don't think anyone's joined us online, right? Nope. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. We're going to adjourn to executive session to discuss personnel matters, and no further business will be done. Thank you.